Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Taylor Radio, the best podcast that you could ever possibly listen to. Um, in this episode, I'm going to talk about an awesome interview between Joe Rogan and a guy named Glenn. Yes, you heard me right, Glenn. This guy went out to the Alaskan wildlife and lived off the land, baby. Supremely fantastic, awesome episode. You should listen to it. Um, After that, I go into details about a bill in California that is causing an uproar, baby, an uproar among writers, among gig workers, independent contractors. The Californians are out to destroy the economy of California, and they are going to be successful. You just watch. In order to get more information, you need to listen. Listen to this pod, which you're already going to do anyway. You can follow me on YouTube, Taylor Space Stutch. You can email me at tayradio1@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter, tstutch1. Go to my website, tstutch.com. Thank you. Enjoy. So the other day, Joe Rogan interviewed a guy named, I guess it's Glenn. Let me see here, Glenn. Villanova, Glenn Villeneuve. It's Villeneuve. And it is extremely interesting. So the guy went on or lived in the Alaska wilderness for many years, for several years. In a few of those years, he went with very, very, very minimal supplies and spent a considerable amount of time living off of the land with no help. And he did get like food resupplies on occasion, but he lived largely off of what he could hunt or find in the Alaskan wilderness. So I don't know. I just found it extremely interesting because the guy was able to live a life of some degree of complete freedom. Now, technically, it wasn't always legal, and he discussed this in his interview with Rogan. It wasn't always legal for him to do what he was doing. He was supposed to have a permit to be where he was at in Alaska. And he wasn't supposed to be living in a cabin that he had. He was supposed to have a permit for a cabin. He was supposed to have a permit for hunting and everything like that. And it's just so interesting hearing these stories because what's striking to me is that you can't be free even if you want to. And that is like, it just kind of sucks. It kind of sucks that we live in a world where you can't just go somewhere and be left alone. That wherever you go, it's owned by a government or somebody, that you can't just go out into the wilderness and live. And that's what this guy was doing. And I really loved listening to the interview because the guy, this Glenn dude, he's Joe Rogan episode 1395. It really is a testament, in my opinion, to freedom and to liberty and to what people can do when they really put their mind to living on their own. Now, what's interesting about this guy is he didn't just go out into the woods without any preparation or training. What I really liked about this guy is several things. One, he is extremely intelligent, even though he didn't even finish high school. Okay, he didn't finish high school, but he had some goals set about what he wanted to do and what he wanted to achieve. And before he ended up going out into the wilderness, I think around the age of 30, he had talked about how he had been learning, reading, talking to people about living out in the wilderness. He had done some, I guess, different types of things out in the wild for as he was growing up. So he was familiar with certain aspects of going into the wild. But he did his homework. He did his due diligence and he prepared. And then, and he was actually going to learn how to be a pilot. And wanted to be like a pilot that would take people, I guess, around on little on flights. I don't know if it would be across the country or in smaller areas. But eventually he learned that if he was going to do that, he wouldn't be able to achieve his real dream, which was to live out in the wilderness. And man, I'll tell you what, this guy made it happen. Listening to his story is so incredible, how he almost died of not having enough food. And it's very interesting because he discussed how he would have to go out every single day and look for food. And whenever he had a bad one, or I think he had probably a couple episodes, but he talked about one notable time period where he didn't have a lot of food, or he didn't have any food, and every day he was losing more and more weight. But he had to go out every single day and hunt and look for food. And he went doing this for several weeks or maybe a couple months before finally he had his friend over the winter drop off some supplies for him, who was supposed to come by, but who had been delaying his drive-by or his flyby. And so when his friend finally came by, he ate so much that he could have died, because whenever you eat so much, there's a condition that was known by the Holocaust survivors. Some people in concentration camps died after they started eating. After not eating for like long periods of time, they ate too much and their bodies couldn't handle it. He almost went through the same thing. In fact, he did go through the same thing. He just didn't die from it. He survived it. But something that is very interesting that I have not experienced but have slightly experienced is that the way that he lived, I have not experienced that, right? Like, I have not experienced the whole idea of I am going to just wake up every day and it's just about surviving. That must be a fascinating way to live. And I do believe that the fact that we don't have to do that is one reason why we have so many mental health problems nowadays. Because there's a lot of reasons for that, right? We live in very unnatural environments. We live in a very unnatural environment. We do very unnatural things all day long, right? We sit for long periods of time. We interact with screens. We stay indoors. A lot of us are not physically challenged very much. We're not really mentally challenged in the way that we're kind of like able to deal with the world. And what I mean by that is many of us are mentally challenged. A lot of us can be cognitively challenged by tasks, right? Like, oh, you've got to figure out how to solve this client's problem, or, oh, you need to figure out how to make this computer program work. But those are more abstract issues. There's the real issues that I think that we get more of. And this is coming from my own experience, but also from what I've just learned, from learning about, evolution and psychology and stuff. It seems as though we're geared for the world. We're geared for action in the world. And when we're just solving problems on a computer screen, it's just not as fulfilling. It's not as nice. Now, back to what I was getting at was this guy, that's all he had to do. And that is way too much for most people to handle in our current state. He had to basically, he had to kill animals to survive. He had to gut them. He had to clean them. He had to cook the food. But what's interesting is that was his sole endeavor every day, right? His sole endeavors were just, okay, it's time to survive. It's time. And, he acquired knowledge and wisdom about living in that environment by living in the environment, by having to survive. And I hate to compare what I'm about to say to this, but it's almost kind of similar to what I loved about living in China, or what I love about going in more like exploring far out places, is that depending on what you do, for me, it's not about relaxation, right? I don't like to go to a resort and just be in a hotel, laying on the beach, because it's too stagnant. What I like doing is having real life in front of me. Don't get me wrong. I love leisure as much as anybody else. I just don't, well, maybe not. I do not enjoy leisure that much. I enjoy active leisure. But anyway, when it comes to traveling and exploring a different place, what I really love about going to places that I'm not familiar with, and what I love about going to Asia, what I loved about China, was that a lot of my daily focus was about having to just figure out how to live in the society, which it's not comparable in many ways to being out in the wilderness. But what is comparable and why I loved it so much, and one reason why I'm going to Taiwan, is because the perspective that you get from just saying, okay, I've got to figure this out every day, and the perspective and the knowledge and the wisdom you gain about yourself and about other people and the environment, it is unparalleled. So I have felt similar things to what this guy talked about, but of course not to the extreme, right? Like I've never been in an environment where I had to worry like, oh, I'm not going to be able to eat. But for me, it's like legitimately, you know, when you're running around in China or Taiwan, it's like, okay, I have to communicate with this person. They don't understand English. I can't read the menu. I need to, I want to meet people. How do I do this? How do I do that? You've got to figure out the culture. You've got to figure out the landscape. Whereas most of us are very familiar with our environments and we're very comfortable with them. And there's nothing really to figure out. So our mind just wanders like, oh, we have all these mundane tasks we do, and there's nothing new. There's nothing exciting. I don't have to figure anything out except what I'm going to do 5 years from now. Or, I don't have anything to do but worry about the future, right? That's what a lot of us spend our time doing in our modern world. What I loved about the way this guy described his life is that it was pure living. It was pure living. He simply was engaged in his environment, and that's all he did was live every single day. And it was fascinating, and it was eye-opening to what that can do to somebody, because he seems very calm, intelligent, and he's a survivor. He's not some guy that you would be like, oh, this guy can't get along in the world. It's like, no, dude, this guy is the only motherfucker that does survive. All the rest of us out here with our jobs and our work and our businesses, we're just bullshitting, Like even myself, it's like, dude, if something happened and I had to kill my own food, like I would probably die because I have no experience with that. So if you want a break from the daily grind, and this is a great time to do it. It's holiday season. It's cold outside. Take a listen, chill out, listen to this guy. Joe Rogan episode 1395, Glenn Villeneuve. It's really good. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about what's going on in California. Okay, guys, so you might wonder, why am I going to talk about this shit going on in California? So, for anybody who doesn't know, there is a law in California called AB 5, I guess, Assembly Bill 5. And it's going to heavily affect gig workers. And it's not necessarily gig workers, people like to just say that. It's independent contractors. So independent contractors are people that work with a company, but they're not employees. So they don't get the same benefits. Maybe they don't get retirement, 401k, all of that. However, in many instances, it also allows independent contractors more flexibility and optionality than employees. So contractors, generally speaking, just depends on your situation. They have more control over their schedule. They can work with multiple companies. They can, those are some big things. Their pay, since they are independent contractors, they don't have employee taxes taken out, and they're able to classify their expenses. Usually, depending on, I guess, where you are, maybe you're able to classify your expenses as tax deductible if you are operating as a small business. If you're an independent contractor, you can set up an LLC, all of that kind of stuff. At least that's my knowledge and understanding of it, but I'm no expert. So there are benefits to it and there are downsides. Like I said, you don't get the same benefits as an employee. Some people that are independent contractors would like to be employees. Others would not. I have worked with many independent contractors. I am currently an independent contractor myself, and I can tell you many people love it because it is flexible. Because you can take on different side projects without issues worrying about a quote unquote boss. You also have it also gives you, psychologically, depending on who you are, it can be a boost. Because like I said, many independent contractors will set up their own business names and will set up their own side business services alongside of what other companies they work with as independent contractors. So, and a lot of people like the ability that a lot of independent contractors, some I should say, like the fact that they can also hire people to do work for them and they can subcontract. They can quit working for a company that they don't enjoy working with, and it doesn't look like they were just an employee that quit. It's like they're an actual business that stopped doing business with somebody. There's lots of different reasons why somebody might want to be an independent contractor. Now, there's a bill, AB 5. And it is known in California as the gig worker bill. And as a piece of legislation, I'm reading this from Investopedia, all right? It's signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom in September of this year, and it was scheduled to go into effect January 1st, 2020. It will require companies that hire independent contractors to reclassify them as employees, with a few exceptions. The bill expands on a ruling made in a case that reached the California Supreme Court in 2018, the Dynamex Company, Operations West versus Superior Court of Los Angeles. So this is very devastating for many people. And a lot of people might go, oh, that's not a big deal. Why is it a big deal? Many reasons why companies use contractors instead of employees is because they cannot afford to pay somebody an employee salary. So this has to do with lots of things, like you could do this with drivers, truckers, like for example, we'll look at Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and then also writers. Lots of people online as freelance writers and also teachers. Basically, the reason a company would use them is because those people that work in those industries are not always working. So if you're a driver or if you're a teacher, or if you're a writer, you don't always have work to do. So companies that hire these people would not be able to stay in business. A lot of them would not be able to stay in business if they were to hire these people as full-time employees, because they simply just don't have enough work for them to do on a regular basis. And also, like, organizing people across various levels to perform various tasks, like say Uber or like a Lyft or a DoorDash, would not be feasible as employees, right? Like, imagine Uber having to hire Uber drivers in it as employees. It would mean that the Uber drivers would have to, they could only work 40 hours a week, or 35 hours a week, depending on where you are, or else you'd have to get paid overtime. Who knows, all the different shit. There would be lots of restrictions on what the contractors could do and on what the company could allow the employees or the workers to do. And when a company uses contractors, so for example, a contractor that is a writer could conceivably work 15 hours a day if they want to. Say a freelance writer says, hey man, I'm making a lot of money right now, and this month I'm going to work extra hard because next month I'm going to take some time off. You could work 12 hours a day, squirrel away all that money, and then take a few weeks off, go travel around and do some shit, spend time with your family. However, being an employee would not allow you to do that. And it would mean that companies, so maybe a company like that hires teachers would have to pay teachers a salary, even if they don't work. It's very expensive. Same thing with drivers. You don't want to have to pay for labor that's not doing anything. And that's what you have to do as an employee. Most of us know this. I've been an employee. I've also been a contractor, self-employed, all that good stuff. And I can tell you that it's a huge difference. When somebody's a contractor, you only pay them for the work they do, right? Or that's hourly. But even hourly, you can get away with that, with not doing that. That being said, employees are on a salary and you pay them regardless of work that they do. So imagine Uber drivers getting paid for 30, 40 hours a week, and they're only driving for 5. Your goal as an Uber driver, getting a employee salary would be to minimize the amount of work you do now, right? It would be across the board. Now, whereas if you are a contractor, you want to maximize the amount of work you do because you only get paid for the work that you do. And that's how these companies that use contractors stay in business. They only pay the writers, the drivers, the teachers, etc. for the work they do. This is a big deal because on Twitter, it's exploding. Lots of people in California, lots of freelance writers are losing their shit. And I'm sure a lot of people are too, across the state. Because a lot of people are losing their jobs. People on Vox, on other heavily known, big name companies. Lots of writers are losing their jobs. Lots of people expect that they're going to lose their jobs, like maybe drivers, things like that, because these companies are going to fire them. I can also tell you firsthand, I do a lot of teaching online, English teaching, and I contract with Chinese companies, and all of those companies, or the ones that I know of, none of them that I know of, let's say there's at least one big one that is not hiring any California teachers. They are not hiring any more California teachers simply because of the new legislation. And it is horrific. It's horrific that people want to do this to other people. They want to take away people's right to work. This is absolutely shameful. There are so many people that want to work as contractors, that want to work as freelancers, and want to work as self-employed people that are not going to be able to do it anymore. So, let's see here. It says, let's take a look. It says the advantages and disadvantages of AB5 for workers. The most immediate implication of AB5 and its 1, 2, 3 test is that it turns independent contractors into employees. The key factor for gig companies is 2, which says that anyone performing work for a company that is the same as the business of that company is presumed to be an employee, says Daniel Lackey, Chief Legal Officer at Motus, which provides reimbursement solutions for business and mobile-enabled workforces. Lackey says that under the new bill, if employers begin classifying gig workers as employees, it means these workers will be entitled to minimum wage, expense reimbursements, employee benefits, rest breaks, and other benefits afforded to employees under California state law. In that sense, the bill creates a level playing field between working in the gig economy and those hired as regular employees. There are potential downsides, however. If gig workers who are treated as employees are, because of this, expected to adhere to a new set of standards regarding how they perform their work, for example, one major appeal of being a driver for a ride-sharing or delivery company is the ability to choose when and when not to work. As an employee, a former gig worker may lose that choice. Certain people are very attracted to this type of work and flexibility and most likely drop out as they may not like fixed schedules or other rules and requirements. So, like I've said before, not only do many contractors like the flexibility that they will opt out, but it's not even about that. Many people aren't even going to have the opportunity to opt out, right? Many people are going to simply lose their jobs. You wait and see. And they're also doing this in New York. And there's a despicable woman named Lorena Sanchez or something. who is in California, who's running this shit, who really pushed for this to be done. And it's shameful because so many people are upset about it. And she's like, oh, everyone's talking about level the playing field. And I'm sitting here thinking like, what the fuck does that even mean? Level the playing field. The people that are working as independent I got to be honest, I don't know what that means. When somebody says level playing field between contractors and employees, it's like they're two different things, and a lot of them do very different things, and you have different, like it's not apples to apples, right? So I just don't understand how somebody could make that kind of comparison, level playing field. They're also doing this in New Jersey. So in New Jersey, they're working on doing a similar independent contractor law. And like I said, this kind of stuff is devastating to people who want to be self-employed, who want flexibility, who want freedom over their schedules, who want freedom to be freelancers or online workers, to be working in the gig economy. Don't get me wrong. I understand that many people would like to be employees as opposed to working in the gig economy, but there's a reason why they're not employees. And it's because the opportunities aren't there. So forcing those opportunities via government action is not going to fix the problem. It's going to make it worse, as we're already seeing. Many people are going to be losing their jobs across the board. And honestly, I wonder sometimes if this is part of a conspiracy by radical left-wingers to cause a revolution in this country. I don't want to go off on that tangent, but I just wonder. Because I just don't understand why people would destroy people's livelihoods like this, right? You destroy their livelihood and then tell them that it's because the capitalist system, when in reality, it's like, dude, these people are just trying to live and survive. Anyway, that's all I got to say for today. If you want to look that up, California Bill AB 5, we're going to have to be on alert as a country, as a nation, to make sure this doesn't come to the rest of the country. California's got it. New Jersey's working on it, but we don't want it. I don't want it in Texas. Nobody else should want it either. But look it up for yourself. There's a lot of discontent among writers already. So if you want to, well, not if you want to, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel, Taylor space Stutch, Taylor space Stutch, Stuch. Follow me on Twitter, tstutch1. Email me, tayradio1@gmail.com. And, go to my website, tstutch.com. Thank you.